Welcome to Change Starts Here, a Franklin Covey education podcast for K-12 leaders driving meaningful change through bold thinking, real stories, and proven strategies for lasting impact.
Hey there, listeners. I am Kim Yaris. So, in this podcast, we share stories from the field about issues impacting educators. We unpack them with practical research insights, and we do it all in the time it takes for a short walk or ride to work. All right, so what's the issue that we're talking about today? It's a biggie. Chronic absenteeism. Students who miss 10% or more days of school per year. So pause here. Let's do the math on that, folks. These are students who miss more than 18 days of class. All right, so before COVID, this was impacting about 15% of students across the nation. But of course, when the pandemic hit, those numbers climbed upward. But here's the problem. They haven't really climbed back down. The national rate of chronic absenteeism is like hovering around 24%, and that's roughly 50% higher than it was before the pandemic. Now, if you're an educator, you feel the impact of this. If students aren't in school, they can't learn. And we know from our conversations with educators that addressing this is a real and persistent challenge. But we've heard encouraging news too. So I want to play a clip for you from John Thomspon, who is the principal of Republic High School in Missouri. Listen to what he has to say about what's happening with attendance there.
So in thinking about that, to get some specific examples, attendance is one of those. That has been a focus of our district over the last, well, actually since COVID, right? So coming back and having a focus on seeing that trend reverse to where our attendance was decreasing every year since COVID. Last year we made that a focal point. That was one of our opportunities to grow in our school improvement plan, and with school belonging as a focus from the MRA, we tied those two things together, and kids did a great job of coming up with opportunities to make sure people felt like they belonged in school, and we've seen a result in growth in our attendance. And that trend reversed, and we'd seen the highest attendance rate last year that we'd had since pre-COVID. And this year we're on pace to actually slightly grow a little bit more in attendance, whereas the previous 4 years we had decreased every year in attendance.
Okay, so I love this clip because it's sort of, here's the bad news, but there's good news too, right? So the trend that John described precisely follows what we're seeing nationally. In fact, it feels worth taking a closer look at his school's data. All right, if you look here at this slide, you can see that before COVID, their chronic absenteeism rates were about 13%. And then it jumped to 21.6% in 2023, and then dropped in 2024 to 18.6%. So better, yes, you hear that trend that John was describing, and it's the trend that mirrors what's happening nationally, but it's lingering still higher than what it was before the pandemic. And that's kind of like the elephant in the room. The question is, why? Why haven't attendance rates returned to where they were before the pandemic? So for me, this just doesn't track, right? I would think that since things have returned to normal, schools are open, attendance rates would go back to where they were before. But that simply isn't the case. And I, for one, I want to know why. Why? And so our team has been digging into the why behind chronic absenteeism, and we found lots of factors that contribute to why students aren't showing up, but there are three that stand out because schools can actually influence these three. So here's what we're going to do. First, I'm going to tell you about those 3 reasons, and then we'll talk about what we can do about them. All right, get ready, because as a mom and a former teacher, this one blew me away. School feels optional. What? All right. So during COVID, schools had to make some accommodation for schools and their families, understandably so. They relaxed expectations by doing things like extending deadlines, allowing generous makeup policies, and leaning into online platforms that made catching up later possible. So during the pandemic, this was exactly what students needed. Except here has been the unexpected consequence of those accommodations. Families began to see absences as less harmful. If a child could work from home, why not? The unintentional message here is that being physically present in class just isn't essential. All right. So what else did we learn from our research into why chronic absenteeism is remaining persistently high? Okay, next one. School feels boring. Oh my gosh, my inner child is fainting, right? Because this is like saying ice cream is overrated. Learning boring? How is that possible? Yet surveys are showing that of students are showing that they're describing school as repetitive and disconnected. And after remote learning, students have began using words like unengaging, irrelevant, and purposeless to describe in-person learning. And so for some students, that's just made skipping a lot more palatable. Believe it or not, that's what the research is saying. Okay, and then third finding from research into chronic absenteeism. Students are reporting that school feels uninviting. Of the 3, this is the one I feel like I understand most deeply. As a parent and as an educator, I know how intimidating school can be. It's a scary place sometimes. And research confirms what we've always known, that students are more likely to attend when they feel cared for, connected, and heard. So strong relationships with their adults, with peers, make school a place where students want to be. And in fact, that is exactly what we heard from Josie, who's a senior at John Thompson's Republic High School, or was last year. When we interviewed her, that is exactly how she described her high school. So take a listen to what she had to say.
I think students want to come to school because of everything that they can do, and they feel like they really are heard here at Republic. But they're also just the motivation that they get from their peers. It's not just coming from admin or anything like that. It's everyone wants to be at school, and there's a purpose for them to be here.
Okay, there you have it, straight from the source. When students feel seen and have a purpose, they come to school. Listeners, if you would like to dive deeper into these findings, check out the handout in our show notes. You'll find links to recent insightful articles that offer even more perspective. They're the very ones that we read to help us understand this. However, back to what I promised you, right? We listen to Josie and we say, I want to make sure my school is like that. I want to have a place where kids want to show up. All right, so now what I've got for you are 3 practical ways to increase student attendance, and you can start implementing these right away. All right, let's get started. The first why behind chronic absenteeism was school feels optional. So what do we do about that? Well, we design learning that can't be made up online. So if families believe that kids can simply make up work at home, schools need to emphasize instruction that can't be replicated outside the classroom. So that means hands-on projects, presentations, collaborative assignments, rich discussions. All of these create experiences students can only get when they're physically present in school. But here's the thing. Being that this is the idea that's out there, we've got some messaging work to do too. So, once you make the shift to doing more of the stuff that can't be replicated online, you've got to let everybody know that you've made that shift. But don't make it sound punitive. What they need to hear is, we care about you. We want you here for these experiences. And families need to hear, we care about your child. Listen to how great what we're doing is, and make sure they show up, because they won't be able to make this up online. That's what the message needs to be. All right. Second reason, or why behind why students aren't coming to school, is that school feels boring. What can we do about it? This one is almost simple. Make learning relevant and engaging, right? Who shows up when something feels boring, right? So what we want to do is we want to tie our lessons to the things that are interesting to students. What are they doing? What are they interested in? And how can we weave that into the lessons that we're teaching? What about their world that they're living in? What are the current events that impact them? Tie it to that. What is it that they see themselves doing in the future? What are their goals? Tie our instruction to that. The more that students see relevance, the more eager they are to show up. All right. And so the third why was about school feeling uninviting. What can we do about that? We can shift the culture by putting relationships first. Ultimately, when students feel like they belong in school, they show up. All of those things that we talked about in our last episode, greeting students by name, giving them jobs in school or in the classroom, checking in with them outside of class, having more than one adult in the school that shows that they care about them. These things cultivate connection. And when students feel safe, valued, and connected, they come to school. All right, folks, there you go. 3 things that you can do right now to get students back to school. And just to remind you, you'll find those in the episode handout of the show notes for today. And if you want to go deeper with your staff or colleagues, we've also got a staff booster that you can download. So, but listeners, before you go, we know that we don't grow in a vacuum, right? And I am betting that you too have things that you've tried that have worked to get students back to school. So my hope is that if you've got great ideas, you'll drop it in the comments section of this video. And if you don't have any great ideas, but you are impacted by chronic absenteeism, we want to hear your story. Our goal this season is to give you what you need to rethink the challenges you face, and your stories and questions will shape how we think about and plan for our future episodes. All right, listeners, that is all I've got for you today. If you have found today's conversation useful, share it with a colleague, subscribe, leave a review. And so I hope to see you back in 2 weeks when Eve will be back with me, and we'll continue talking about the issues that matter most to you. Take care.
Franklin Covey Education is a trusted partner in developing leaders from the classroom to the boardroom in over 8,000 schools in over 70 countries.